What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is the early week college basketball betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me today, Greg Waddell, as usual on Mondays, and Mike Randall filling in for Mike Calabrese, who's a little under the weather. Appreciate you joining, Randall. We have a lot to get to today. We will talk the weekend that was, key takeaways, rants, anywhere you want to go. Buy, sell this week, not a conference, but bubble teams. You can go anywhere in the country of teams that are fighting for their tournament lives. And then, of course, we'll go quickly around the horn style and give out a few spots that we're looking at for tonight's slate, Monday and Tuesday. So before we get started, Greg, how was the Super Bowl?
I mean, the Super Bowl was the Super Bowl. I watched. It was great. It was thrilling. It was also like infuriating to watch these teams punt the ball and attempt a bunch of field goals, knowing that mad maniac Dan Campbell would have made this incredibly more fun to watch. So, look, I thought it was like both teams' C game in the first half. It ended fun. I'm no football analyst. The Super Bowl's fun. I'm ready to turn the page to college basketball. And I'm honestly ready to give people a primer of what to expect because that's what I learned this weekend, Stuck. I don't know that anybody's good in college basketball. I think we got Purdue. I think we got UConn. I think that's it. I think if you watched college basketball last season and you tuned in after the Super Bowl, you probably noticed a very similar situation where everybody told us Purdue was great. Everybody told us Alabama was great. And then we got to March and it's the Sweet 16 and both have been bounced. So I don't know what to expect. I think there's going to be chaos. I think a lot of teams people think are really good. Kentucky, not good at this point. Kansas survived without Kevin McCullough. That's another one. Shout out to Randall, who's going to make a Johnny Furphy-like performance after we called him off the bench tonight. He's no Nick Timberlake. But my takeaway is I don't think anybody's good in college basketball outside of Purdue and UConn, and I don't even know that I trust those teams in March.
Nobody's good. Love it. I agree. I think it's another chaotic March. It's the way we like it. Randall, and I was speaking of the Super Bowl, with Dan Campbell. Yeah, Dan Campbell would have went. I didn't read all of Shanahan's comments and didn't watch his press yet, but 4th and 4 at the 9 in overtime, playing Mahomes. I would love to know how much he considered going for it there. Because if you don't get it, the Chiefs they don't have 4 downs, right? They're until they get to maybe the 40. Like you can still get a stop there. But yeah, Campbell definitely would have had a couple more. He's on the opposite end of the spectrum as far as aggressiveness compared to those two coaches. Randall, how was the Super Bowl for you?
Yeah, it was fun. I had family over, got most of the bets right. The Kelsey under slipped out of my hands at the very last second, but Ayuk, Patrick Mahomes running, death taxes and Mahomes running this year, guys, set a record with rushing attempts and rushing yardage because his receivers can't get open. The only thing I thought would have been funny, Stuck, is my overall investment in best ball and Sky Moore. I was positive that Sky Moore was going to find the end zone at some point just to come full circle. But great win for the Chiefs. You got to put a nail in them. And it's amazing how many people came out today. Niners did not know the rule in overtime, right? They thought they scored a touchdown and they won the game. So that's a big fumble by the NFL.
Yeah, it was fun Super Bowl luck. Unfortunately, I faded Mahomes. I can say I successfully faded Mahomes in a Super Bowl as an underdog. I just bet the Niners first half. I was too afraid to go against them for the full game. But and by the way, I'm traveling down in Aruba, so if my sound is just a little off, that's why I apologize. But I was 1 second away from hitting double overtime, 100-1. I collapsed to the ground so Kelsey got tackled and I'm staring at the game clock and it was 1 second behind the play clock. So I knew they had a snap. And if it was 1 second the other way, the Chiefs 100% would have run it down. And then, think about the next play. I was 1 second away from 100-1 double overtime. So, that was painful, but a fun sweat. I can't complain too much because I had a Purdy under 12.5 rushing yards, and he was at 13 and then kneeled to go to overtime and ended 12. So it's always a give and take. But let's full turn to college basketball now from here on out. And before we know it, March will be here. I mean, in just like almost 2 weeks, just a little over 2 weeks, which is pretty crazy. Cannot wait. Conference tournament weekend and the NCAA tournament. So let's talk about the weekend that was. Key takeaways, rants, anywhere where you want to go with it. Greg, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it's basically what I alluded to, but I'll drill into some specific teams that I'm frustrated with right now. I truly, not a bit, do not believe there's many good teams in the country this season. And I think there's a broader conversation to have at some point, maybe a year or two down the line, of like, what's going on with this dip in overall performance across the sport for me. I think it probably has something to do with all these teams playing 23-year-olds that get an extra year due to the COVID year. And it's the way it's become an open market and we're just leasing guys for 6 months. I don't know. The sport is in a very strange space right now. And specifically in my territory in the Big Ten, I've been told there's 2 teams that are quote unquote contenders. As little as a week ago, people were trying to get me to consider Wisconsin as a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. They look horrible. They look horrible right now. They've lost 4 straight games. This is the same team, mind you, that was an NIT team last season, returned everybody, added AJ Storr, but AJ Storr just took Connor Esigen's place. And yes, he's better than Esigen. Don't get me wrong. There's no question. He's more athletic. He's quicker. But when you replace your most potent offensive weapon on the perimeter with a different potent offensive weapon and nothing else changes, your team build didn't really change much. And I think we're seeing that right now as they lose at Michigan and at Rutgers, blown out at the rack by a Rutgers team that is not going to make the NCAA tournament. I'm really unimpressed with them. And then Illinois is the other one in the Big Ten, boys. You can't blame them too much for going on the road and losing to Michigan State, but I can blame them for how they lost to Michigan State. I mean, an 8-point lead with 5 minutes left in that game, and the ball just stops. I mean,
their offense and end game scenarios, it gets ugly at times.
It's gross, and I'm trying to diagnose it. I think it's largely because they don't have a true point guard, one. They put Ty Rodgers on the bench. He's the pseudo point guard for this team. But Terrence Shannon Jr., the special things about Terrence Shannon are, wow, just get him the ball in transition and watch him go coast to coast. When they're trying to kill clock, when they're trying to hold a lead, you don't use those talents at all. It turns into some ball stopping, guys just standing and watching. So, yeah, am I frustrated
Shannon
about
ends up taking bad shots, like just hoisting from great contested threes. Yep.
Yeah, it's gross. So this is why I'm resentful this morning. I think it's my teams doing this to me, but I'm just selling a lot of the country right now outside of Purdue and UConn. And as a fan of the sport, it kind of scares me.
Yeah, Greg, the Lions fan, 2 weeks of non-Lions coverage, non-Lions in the Super Bowl, comes out salty on this Monday morning as expected. Randall, what do you got from the weekend?
Yeah, besides the obvious with Kentucky, and look, I know that there's some buyout or there's something where Calipari can transition into the athletic director position. But guys, he is a let's go guy. He has never been a tactician, and that's been exposed. 3 straight losses at home. He usually banked on accumulating talent. The running joke I had years ago is he had 36 stars worth of recruits. That's 5 5-stars and 2 4-stars, whatever the combination was. And in the end, they just cannot now stop anyone. And it's a huge, huge problem. The other issue is what was even more damning is teams just cannot win on the road now in college basketball. Late in the year, teams are jockeying for position, trying to get into March Madness. It is impossible to win on the road, which is what makes Gonzaga's win even more damning at Kentucky. You saw Auburn get to go to Florida, get absolutely destroyed. Arizona, who we all thought was going to suffer against Colorado, somehow fights and gets the win. And Washington State even wins on the road at Oregon. So what I'm noticing is if you're able to get a road win in conference, even Houston, who won at Cincinnati but did not cover 5.5, that is really impressive. So you have to start with the fact of, can this team possibly win on the road? And the thing we have to remember, when you get to March Madness, those are neutral sites. So you're going to look at a lot of these losses, like Greg brought up Wisconsin, a lot of them at Nebraska, at Rutgers, they can possibly get it going again because now we're going to neutral sites. But winning on the road is impossible, which is why when it happens, it's really eye-opening. Terrible weekend for Kentucky.
Yeah, speaking of Kentucky, it's, like if, say, Pitino was there. By the way, my rant is St. John's not covering. I have 8.5. Missed their last 7 layups, and Tyler Kolek just puts a dagger in my eye with a step back 30-footer when St. John's just had conceded the game to win by 11. And St. John's couldn't make a layup to save their life. It was just a slow, cruel death from up 15. But it said it had Patino. Like, okay, you know that your team can't defend. And it's multiple, it's off the ball, it's, you know, in pick and roll, it's at the rim. Okay, well, let's maybe try zone. Let's play a matchup zone. Let's press. Use our athletes. Like let's try something else before March comes around. And they just continue to get roasted across the board defensively. But so bad weekend. Another bad result for Kentucky. My key takeaways are, one, I tweeted this out as a joke, but Texas A&M is the best team in the country when they make threes, but which is not true. But when they do make threes, as you saw against Tennessee, that team is super dangerous. They're going to be like an 8 or 9. Now the problem is they still can't defend elite bigs. There'll be a problem if they got Purdue or UConn. But who's the one that has to play Texas A&M? And if Radford and Taylor are making threes, they are just a pest. And they're going to get Anderson Garcia is going to get a million offensive rebounds. But when they're actually making threes, that team is super dangerous. And on the other end of the spectrum, really disappointed in Colorado. I mean, one of the best spots of the college basketball season. You get Arizona and altitude. It's already one of the hardest trips going from Utah. And you get them off triple overtime. And they were outworked, out hustled. So I was super and that was a huge opportunity for Colorado, which I think if the season ended today, they're probably an outside looking in. That team has way too much talent in that spot to come up that empty against Arizona, but credit to the Wildcats for that win. But speaking of the bubble, let's talk about some buy and sell for teams on the bubble. Mike, you usually don't do this episode with us, but Greg tends to buy teams high. He does it the opposite and sell low. So it was my favorite part of the week to see who Greg is buying. I'm expecting him. Well, it's tough with a bubble team. So maybe I'll try to guess. Greg is buying Florida. after they demolish Auburn. But Greg, I'll start with you. Who you buying?
So Florida was the first team written down when I was researching this over the weekend. I did erase them stuck because I got to keep you guessing. And for the record, I did it right for the first time last week, all season. First time. I bought low. I sold high. I sold Dayton. They lose. I bought, I guess Loyola Chicago was winning. I didn't buy low, but they keep winning. So I was 2 for 2 last week as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, they covered twice too, Loyola.
Yeah, somehow, some way. It's never pretty, but it's working for Drew Valentine. I'm going to buy Seton Hall, which I think officially qualifies as buying extremely low after they just got destroyed by Villanova. The whole thing with Seton Hall to me is Kadari Richmond healthy or not? To me, clearly not healthy right now. If he doesn't get healthy, they're cooked. I'm going to assume that he gets healthy by the end of this season. He was stellar, looking like a lock first-team All-Big East guy. He missed the 2 games that they lost to Providence and Marquette. He's returned. Since he's returned, he hasn't played 30 minutes in a basketball game. He was basically never coming off the floor before this. Every single game was like 36 minutes. To me, that's the obvious outlier here. He's got a month to get right. The thing is, they're going to need some of these games. So he doesn't have two weeks to sort of work his way back slowly. But I like the way their schedule opens up. 4 of their last 7 are at home. The 3 that are not at home are all marquee win opportunities on the road, which if you are a bubble team, sometimes that's actually what you want. It's counterintuitive to what fans sometimes think. It's like you just want an easy schedule. No, you want opportunities to boost your resume so that you can jump over other teams that aren't picking up quad 1 wins this late in the season. They go at St. John's, at Creighton, and at UConn. Outside of the 4, they should win at home against none of the top Big East teams. If they can take care of business at home, steal one of those 3 on the road, go 5-2 to end the regular season, I think they're in the tournament for sure. Right now, they're on the 12 line, according to Bracket Matrix, but I still believe in this team. They're tough as nails. They defend their butts off, even though metrics don't say they're a great defense. Like, they really can make things tough with all those guards, all the speed and athleticism they have on the perimeter. They just need Kadari Richmond healthy, and I really, really trust this team.
Yeah, Seton Hall next has Xavier at home on Wednesday, and Xavier is actually one of the teams I'm selling. So that matches up as a potential good spot for Seton Hall. Game should be around a pick. I mean, with so I'll just touch on Xavier. I'll mention another sell later, but I think that I got to give Sean Miller a ton of credit for what he's done with this team, but I feel like they've just hit their peak and they can't really do much. No Fremantle, no Hunter. I mean, they were expected to have both of them this year as potential all Big East players, and they're out for the season. They just rely on such tough shots. And, if you look at their wins, their last 3 wins, home against Villanova, home against St. John's, at DePaul, before then, home against Georgetown, home against Butler. I'm not really impressed with their wins. I think there's going to be some opportunities to fade them starting with Wednesday against Seton Hall. So I'm on board with you there. But let me throw it to Mike. Randall, who are you looking to buy from the bubble?
Yeah, I don't know if this is really a bubble team because of the win against North Carolina, but guys, I've been very cool on Clemson for most of the year, and I'm starting to come around. 14 seasons at Clemson for Brad Brommel, only 3 trips to the NCAA tournament. Last one was in 2021, and they lost in the first round. But I've watched this team now. They're very impressive. So I'm buying them as a team that can make the second weekend. Even though right now they're projected around a 7-8 seed, they are very dangerous in that 8-9 matchup. Rest of the season, Miami, NC State, Georgia Tech, Florida State, Pittsburgh, Notre Dame, Syracuse, all of which they're projected to win, and then Wake Forest away, battle at the end. Right now, they are 16-6, just 6-6 in the ACC. So yes, they beat North Carolina, they beat Syracuse on Saturday. No one noticed and no one cared. But this team has a fantastic big in PJ Hall. They make their free throws. They're great on the offensive boards. Shiflin is one of the most underrated players in the country, just does everything that's winning plays. Joe Girard can make big threes, and he did so against North Carolina. So as much as Brad Brommel is not sexy, and no one thinks that Clemson is a team that can make a run, they have some really impressive matchups. And look at their metrics here. They are 29th in the net. They have 18th overall in strength of schedule, and they got 4 quad 1 wins. Now, the loss that's brutal is the quad 3 loss where they lost at home to Georgia Tech. So that's going to keep people off their scent. So not buying them stuck, I don't know if it's against the rules, to get in the NCAA tournament, but buying them as a team that can make a substantial run here. And no one really thinks anything about Clemson because they have no history in the NCAA tournament recently under Brommel.
Yeah, as of right now, Clemson is, let's see, they are projected as a 6 seed, but so I don't know. We'll count it. I mean, what are we going to do? We can't scrap this from the audio, but I think it's a good team to bring up. Their last 3 losses, Georgia Tech, you mentioned double overtime, Duke by 1 on a foul with 1 second left, and then Virginia by 1. I worry a little bit just about their guards defensively, and staying in front of other like elite guards is a bit problematic for me. But yeah, when PJ Hall is on, and think about it in league play, they're 13th in 3-point percentage and 3-point percentage against. So they have some potential looming regression, shooting regression on both ends as well. But I guess I'll throw out my buy. I'm potentially buying. Is this the low point of Miami? I know they have issues on defense. They haven't been healthy all year. They need George back. He didn't play on Saturday against UNC where they covered. But I mentioned Miami just because, when this is a team that made a run last year in the tournament, when they're fully healthy, and they're on the outside looking into the bubble, but when they're fully healthy, I think they're dangerous, and they're going to be worth a look in the ACC, I think, as a flyer to win the ACC, because it's Duke, UNC, but then it's a jumble mess. Depending on what the draw looks like, Miami could be an intriguing option to play themselves in. I'm going to take a page out of Greg's book and also buy high on a team that just beat back-to-back ranked opponents for the first time in program history. But I'm buying Nevada. Their defense is trending up. If you look at all the advanced metrics, kind of bottomed out in that New Mexico game where I think they gave up 87. But with Blackshear and Lucas, who are tough shot makers, and then you have such versatility. I think Alfred has really gotten a handle of how he wants to use his lineup because they have such versatility. If you use KJ Himes, who will find a way to foul out, but give you 20 minutes of really good defense on the interior. And you got a really stout defensive unit with him in there. Or you can go with Davidson, and Davidson is playing so well of late. I think he's raised the ceiling of this team. But you can go, when Himes is in foul trouble or you sit him, you go with Davidson at the 5, and then you have, a much more versatile and explosive offensive team. So I think as of right now, I think Nevada, they're right on the border. They're like the definition of a bubble team. But I think if they get in, they're a team, just because of their guard play, that can cause some teams some trouble. But let's go to the other side and talk about bubble teams that we're looking to sell. Greg, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah,
I'm going to do it right. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Greg. You go.
So I'm going to do this right. Calling it what it is. I'm selling high. I don't think you can get higher than Gonzaga after winning in Rupp Arena. I do not believe in this team. This win was impressive in result. It was impressive in eye test first half. They were great. They scored, I believe, every possession in the final 12 and a half minutes except for 4. Gonzaga scored the basketball in this game, and they still almost lost. Like that's a Kentucky game through and through. Kentucky has the ball with a chance to tie or win with 20 seconds left. We all saw what happened. We know Cal's history with, as Randall correctly alluded to, he's not a tactician. He's a rah-rah guy. I still don't believe this Gonzaga team is anything special. I was almost more frustrated with the fact that they were letting Kentucky hang around. I mean, they have the double-digit lead at halftime, and before you can even snap your fingers, Kentucky's up 6 in the second half. The Zags still are 1-5 against top 60 opponents this year. That's not changing. And at the end of the season, they go at San Francisco and at St. Mary's. I think a lot of people are incorrectly assuming that Gonzaga is safely in the field now. They are still outside of the bubble. According to Bracket Matrix, we'll see what all the updates look like this week. But if they lose one of those 2 to end the season, they're not going to be in the field coming into the West Coast Conference tournament. And if they go head-to-head against St. Mary's for a conference tournament championship, I strongly believe St. Mary's is the better team. Like, and not just because of the result the first game at the Kennel. St. Mary's is just playing significantly better, more consistent. You know you can trust that defense night in and night out right now. You know you can trust Aiden Mahaney on the offensive end. I don't trust a thing about Gonzaga other than that they have enough firepower to blow out the worst teams on their schedule, and give them credit for the desperation spot at Kentucky. To me, once again, boys, it was more about who Kentucky is than anything impressive that Gonzaga did in that win.
Yeah, I agree with you. That win did nothing to. I kind of just made me question Kentucky more. Maybe Kentucky if Kentucky takes a couple more losses, we might be talking about them on the bubble for what it's worth. But I agree with you. I'm not a fan of this Gonzaga team, even though they're improving a bit. But I still don't think that they're a threat to do any damage if they even get in. By the way, and I mentioned Xavier before. I don't have anything really bad to say about this team, but Washington State, who I think would be in the field as of right now, just from a pure market perspective, I think that they're probably at the peak of their value. I mean, they've won, 7 of 8. They have a couple games where they're going to be a team that's not great from the line, which could matter as bigger favorites coming up before they play Arizona. And if they take care of business, that game could be for the Pac-12 regular season title. So there might be, in their next couple games, might get a little bit of inflated numbers with Washington State, who, I mean, you talk about who they were supposed to have and who they ended up having. Kyle Smith, potential coach of the year in my eyes. But Randall, where are you going for a potential sell of a bubble team?
Yeah, in the Mountain West, guys, I think that New Mexico is still very overvalued. If you look at this team, New Mexico, they are number 22 in the net, but their strength of schedule is 116 and a gaudy 266 non-conference strength of schedule. So as much as we talked about the guards weren't healthy and they had some big wins at home, I still don't know if they're one of the top teams in the Mountain West. So I don't know how many the Mountain West is getting in, but I think New Mexico could be on the other side here. They've lost 2 of their last 3, but now they go away to Nevada tomorrow, then away to San Diego State. So they could very quickly just be 7-6 in the Mountain West. So enough of this 6 bids from the Mountain West. I think you're looking at New Mexico being in some serious trouble. And of course, they had the catastrophic loss at home to UNLV. That is a quad 3 loss. So this team, if you look at their metrics here, New Mexico, 2-2 against quad 1, 2-2 against quad 2, 6-1 against quad 3. Their non-conference really wasn't impressive. So right now, I believe, Stucky could correct me, New Mexico is looking at like a 10 seed, something like that. My prediction now is they do not make the NCAA tournament because I think teams like Utah State, Nevada, San Diego State are all better than them and are going to beat them. They're going to need a big run in the Mountain West tournament to even talk about making the NCAA tournament because they don't have the resume. As much as we love Pitino and they've had some gaudy wins, scoring 99 points at home against Utah State, I think they're a little overvalued. I'm going to sell them.
Yeah, New Mexico, I think, is safely in as of right now. I think they're probably like a 7 or 8, but they could play themselves out, and you could get some cannibalization. I still question I have questions about their defense if they're not turning teams over, and that's why I'm looking to buy Nevada again at home. Nevada doesn't turn the ball over, and then they'll be able to score on this New Mexico team that swept by UNLV, which could end up costing them if they suffer a few more losses here down the stretch.
Yeah, and Stuck, their road wins this year away from home, true road wins, New Mexico State, Air Force, San Jose State, and Wyoming. Those are the only substantial losses they had away from home besides neutral, of course, which Toledo, Rice, Pepperdine, it is what it is.
Yep. And yeah, I think that if Nevada beats New Mexico, then if the season ended then, like if Nevada beats New Mexico tomorrow and the season ended Wednesday, I think the Mountain West would have 6 teams in. But there's a couple that could certainly play their way out. Nevada is trending up, but that loss to Wyoming could end up hurting them in the end. But they're definitely trending up. In New Mexico, yeah, there's just defensive issues if they don't turn other teams over. But let's talk about why most of you are listening, and that's some early week looks. You go Monday, Tuesday. If you want to even mention something on Wednesday, feel free to do so. But Greg, what are you looking at for the early week?
I'm going to go to a play tonight, and there's some questions with this one, but I feel confident enough to make a guess at what to suspect. I'm going Texas Tech -2.5 at home against Kansas. Tech's 12-1 at home. The questions I'm referring to are Kansas's injury situation. DeJuan Harris suffered an injury against Baylor. It didn't look great. Bill Self with some very ominous quotes after the game, both about Harris and Kevin McCullough, who was scratched an hour before the Baylor game over the weekend. About Kevin McCullough, he said, I can't imagine he'll be much better Monday if he could barely move today. Self also alluded to the fact that the game plan against Baylor was to play extremely slow. That's not normal for Kansas. When they are at full strength, they like to get up and run. They're 106th in tempo over the course of the season. Against Baylor, I mean, that was a 64-61 ball game. They wanted to limit possessions because they had to play Nick Timberlake 31 minutes, boys. Nick Timberlake, who, oh, by the way, gave up 2 wide open threes and missed a front end in the final minute to try to give this game away. I think Kansas is legitimately banged up. I would guess Harris tries to play through whatever his stuff is. And McCullough, I would be surprised if he goes tonight. Regardless, I don't think we're going to see 35 minutes from either of those guys on the road against a Tech team that really needs a marquee win to boost their seed situation right now. And they love playing slow. If Bill Self's going to slow it down again, that plays right into the way Texas Tech plays. I'll take -2.5. And I think that line, honestly, for it being there, to me, tells me these are true game time decisions. If one of them are out, I think there's a lot of value on the Red Raiders.
Yeah, I agree. I played this as well. I think that there's a chance both of them are out. Quick turnaround. Kansas safely in the tournament. It's like, do you want to risk further injury? It's like to get these guys healthy on a quick turnaround. And this Kansas team doesn't have great depth as it is. You take McCullough out there, who's great on defense, gives you shooting, can create, and then say you take Harris out, then like you're getting Timberlake, and then Marco Jackson's got to play point, right? He's got like a 28-30% turnover rate. I mean, DeJuan Harris does so much for that team. So if him and McCullough are out, yeah, this line's way too short. Randall, what are you looking at for early week?
I give Josh Eilert a lot of credit. He came into an impossible situation at West Virginia with Bob Huggins, and this team competed early. But folks, if you look at their schedule, find me the win they had away from home. Oh, you cannot. They are 8-15. They are 3-7 in the Big 12. Now they're going to TCU, who needs this game in the worst way. The line's around 12. I do not care. West Virginia plays at a very fast pace. They don't rebound the ball. They can't score. They can't make free throws, and they've been struggling on the road. TCU, coming off of 2 losses, needs this game 16-7, 5-5. I think they get the win. I'm not worried about a backdoor cover here. I think TCU wins soundly with their pace, gets up and down the floor, scores, and hits some threes, which they've been able to do, shooting 39.6% in Big 12 play. So I'll take TCU here big over West Virginia tonight.
Yeah, West Virginia per synergy 12th percentile in transition defense efficiency. That's bad against TCU. Very, very bad. Who wants to get out and run as much as humanly possible. I agree, Greg. For Monday night, I agreed with you tonight on Texas Tech. I'll also throw out, and I also mentioned Nevada tomorrow night. They don't turn the ball over, and I think at home, where they've been so good against New Mexico, they're going to be able to score, and I think they match up pretty well with the Lobos. I'll be looking to buy them at a game, hopefully around a pick. And I'm actually buying Florida as a threat in the tournament, but they might be a little bit too overvalued after their huge win over Auburn against LSU. LSU can turn Florida over. Florida's not looking to shoot a ton of threes, which is really how you beat LSU's aggressive defense. And LSU can compete on the glass here, defend near the rim. So I think we might get a bit of a deflated number in a pretty bad spot for Florida. But I do like where Todd Golden has his team going. And they do have a ton of potential to be, if they keep improving, they could be scary and make at least just a second weekend in March. Greg, what else you got for early week?
I'm going to go back to my Big Ten territory. One of the teams I alluded to being frustrated with this morning. I'm going with Illinois minus whatever the number is against Michigan on Tuesday. I like an alternate line. I like whatever you need. This Michigan team is absolutely dead, boys. Without Doug McDaniel on the road, that strange academic suspension, they simply have no answers. They went on the road to Nebraska, a Nebraska team who, mind you, was coming off of some emotional losses to Illinois and Northwestern last week, and Nebraska steamrolled them. I mean, it was 25-9 10 minutes into this game. They had a 30-point lead in the first half, while Jalen Llewellyn, the 24-year-old who plays in a bionic leg brace, it just has no answers. I feel bad for the players on Michigan at this point that they're put in this situation, but they're not playing for anything. They know the season's over. Half these guys were leased for 6 months. Illinois still is very much playing for seeding, playing for serious things. They believe in their minds they can still work their way into that final game of the season at home against Purdue and have that mean something. They're a couple games back in the loss column, but Illinois is undefeated off of a loss this year. They've always bounced back with good performances. Brad Underwood owns Juwan Howard. I believe he's won 8 straight in the series, many of them ugly whenever they've had the clear better team. It's gotten gross. I think Illinois wins this game in a let off some frustrations type performance by 20 plus. I'd be shocked. KenPom has the number at 14 for what it's worth. I would guess, honestly, it opens at like 15 or 16, which is going to seem huge, but much like the Purdue-Indiana game, when a team's overmatched, don't sweat it. Illinois will be way too much for Michigan.
You've had a good pulse on this Michigan team, especially away from home. And if Michigan somehow is up at the half, because they're like sometimes this incredible first half team, and then they just completely melt in the second. I think you had Michigan State against them, right? And then Michigan State was down at the half and then just obliterated them in the second half. Brandon, got anything else for the early week?
Shout out to Trading Places, the movie from the 80s with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy. I am buying Wisconsin here, having lost 4 games in a row. Now returning home against Ohio State. Now is the time to get on the train. You have an Ohio State team that is 8-15-1 against the spread. They are 1-5 on the road. Remember, as much as Wisconsin has struggled this year, look at their home battles. It was Purdue at home, no shame there. beat Michigan State by 15, beat Indiana hung 91, beat Northwestern by 8, beat Nebraska by 16, beat Iowa by 11. They're very good at home. This is a desperation spot. Chris Holtmann has struggled. He's had the nice win in double overtime. That's fantastic. I think Wisconsin bounces back here. Love them on the first half line, whatever it is. Ken Pom has it around 9. I think Wisconsin beats Ohio State by double digits on Tuesday, bounces back and gets right here.
Yeah, pretty good spot. And if you had Maryland, by the way, against Ohio State on Saturday, ooh, I mean, I don't know how many free throws they missed to seal that game, and then it goes to double overtime. They had a couple shots to win the game. It goes to double overtime, and there's a dunk, and they lose by 4. Overtime losses in college basketball can be so brutal. I'll mention one for tomorrow. Greg, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, but Cincinnati at home, this win, I think if they win this game, they'd be in the tournament if the season ended today. Just a massive game for them. Their losses lately, they lost by 4 to Oklahoma, 5 at Kansas. They lost by 4 at West Virginia, 5 at home to Houston. They lost by 3 at Baylor, 1 to Texas. They've been so close in a number of these games. They do all of the peripheral things well. They can rebound. They take care of the ball. They play really hard. They just got CJ Frederick back. They could use his shooting. He wasn't really ready to go. I think he only played like 2 or 3 minutes against Houston, but I'm expecting his usage to ramp up a little bit more. And they're not a great shooting team, but they've been running a little bad in conference play. So you could see some positive regression there. But Iowa State here going to Cincinnati, not an easy place to play. They just beat Texas and TCU. They have Texas Tech and Houston coming up, which could go a long way in deciding the Big 12 race. So potential little sleepy spot for Iowa State. Cincinnati wants to run a lot, and you have to get out in transition against this Iowa State team when you can, so they can rebound, get out and run, because the Iowa State half-court defense is a menace. And this Iowa State offense, particularly on the road, still will go through long droughts. So I think this is a good spot to back the Bearcats. Do you have any feel there, Greg?
So it's probably a stay away for me. I agree with you on the spot. It all signs point to Cincinnati, right? Desperate team at this point in the season for a resume win is always something to look for. That said, I think Iowa State is very legitimate on a national level. Like, this is an elite defense with an elite point guard. They've got one of the best freshmen in the country in Momcilovic. Like, it's kind of all coming together for Otts here. And you go through, like, the way to summarize this broadly for both teams to me is, like, Cincinnati just hasn't gotten over the hump against the cutoff line in the Big 12. If you draw a line halfway through the conference of the upper echelon of talented teams and then the lower echelon, like, their wins are UCF, Texas Tech, and TCU. TCU is probably right around the cutoff. Anytime they've played a Kansas, a Houston, an Oklahoma, a Baylor, they've lost those games. BYU is the one that bucks that trend for Cincinnati on the season. Iowa State's been the flip side of that, and they have some great wins as well, don't get me wrong. But anytime Iowa State has played a lower tier team in the Big 12, they've taken care of business, even if it hasn't been pretty. So spot says Cincinnati. Brain kind of says Iowa State for me here, depending on what the number is, probably a stay away.
By the way, I love watching Jizzle James for Cincinnati. He's going to be a player. He's electric to watch. All right, good stuff, gentlemen. Thanks for joining me. Thanks to our producer, Matt Mitchell, on the back end. Our other producer, David, is on vacation. Hope you enjoy your vacation, David. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that like, subscribe button. Also, make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to Big Bets on Campus, and leave a review, 5-star review. You can say whatever. I'll do some giveaways in another week or two. So if you have a chance, those really help us out. Tell a friend, tell an enemy. But thanks for tuning in. Good luck on all of your wagers this week. Guys from 3 Man Weave will be back on Wednesday as always, and then we'll be back later in the week for the weekend college basketball betting preview. And then 10:30 a.m. Eastern every Saturday, Big Bets on Campus live. Make sure you check us out there on X. But thanks for tuning in. Good luck with all of your wagers, and we'll see you later in the week. Cheers.